Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Stacey.
And this is the Body Smart Podcast.
And today we have got the gorgeous Kate Rowe-Ham with us. And she is a personal trainer specialising in helping women peri, post, mid-menopause. She's also an author and she's got her own app, Owning Your Menopause app. So she's got a wealth of experience and knowledge in working with women to just empower them through menopause, which is amazing. And we're going to be tapping into all of her own experiences today, which I think is a great place to start. So, Kate, would you mind sharing your own fitness journey? Because I know when we were chatting earlier, you said you've kind of been into it, but it wasn't like your jam.
Yeah, no, totally. I think it's a great place to start because actually one of the messages that I really want to get across to women is that it's never too late to start training. And although I've always loved exercise, I did it for all the wrong reasons. So it was always sort of an aesthetic benefit behind working out. So I qualified as a PT when I was around about probably 40. And actually the reason I did was because I'd had my third child. I'd put on quite a bit of weight and I couldn't find anywhere to work out, anywhere to kind of get back on the track and get healthy again. You're sort of stuck at home. So I actually started kind of in this space, very much training women with children. And that's sort of why I qualified. And then slowly, things just weren't falling into place. I was having sleepless nights, night sweats, aches and pains, and I didn't really know what it was.
So was that about the same age, about 40?
So that was about 42.
Okay.
So everyone was kind of saying you're too young. When I sort of thought it might be hormones, everyone said it will be kids, looking after them. That comes with all sorts of responsibilities. And actually, my son, bless him, doesn't believe in sleep. Still doesn't believe in sleep. So I could get that. Broken sleep and all of those things would kind of possibly bring about some of the symptoms I was experiencing, but it kind of didn't make up for crippling like joint aches and pains. And as a PT and as I was teaching, it was really difficult actually to show up some days and be really jolly. Actually, one of the biggest symptoms I had was really crippling anxiety, breathlessness, heart palpitations. And I guess my menopause journey kind of coincided with lockdown as well. So when I did reach out to GPs, I wasn't getting much response. And then when you Googled menopause back then, it didn't bring up images of sort of who I thought I was, sort of older images. And most of the symptoms they talked about were sweats. But kind of to cut a long story short in terms of sort of why I'm here and my own journey was that I basically went under self-investigation to diagnose myself and to then work out what it was I needed to do to thrive. Because we aren't given that information, and I know we'll come onto it. There are many ways to manage a menopause, but in my own personal experience, making some really fundamental lifestyle changes, specifically lifting weights, cutting back, cutting out alcohol, eating the right foods has made a significant difference. And that is sort of where I found myself. And that's what I've based the book, the app on. I've obviously done my own extensive research, but that's what I want to share and empower, I guess, with women is through my own journey, through my own findings, that we all start somewhere and we can all get somewhere. And to start thinking about future-proofing our health. Because as I said at the beginning, for so many women, it's an aesthetic benefit and really doesn't matter what you look like on the outside if you're kind of not, healthy on the inside.
Yeah, and I think raising that awareness is so important. I know you've done some work with Gen M, haven't you?
Yes.
And they're really good at that. And they've got their 48 symptoms list, which when you think about 48 symptoms, you're like,
that's a lot.
blimey.
Oh, and
It's
do you know
a lot,
what?
isn't it?
I think there are more.
I agree.
I think there are more that
Yeah.
we just, I think we also have to be really careful that we don't blame everything on menopause.
Yes, you have to, because it can become a crutch then to say
Yeah.
like menopause is making me feel this, and this, when it could be, well, have you got great sleep habits? Have you got good movement habits? Are you eating, the right food? Are you drinking too much? Are you drinking enough water? Just some of the basics.
And you just totally really, and you touch on a really good point, because a lot of the times I'm asked, what makes you a menopause fitness trainer? And that's why I don't say I'm a menopause fitness trainer. I'm a women's health coach that specialises in that, because predominantly there's not much that we need to do. I'm just going to do myself out of a job here. Predominantly, there's not much that we need to do differently in terms of training, because we should all be lifting weights. We should all be eating well.
Yeah.
We should all be sleeping. We should all be rehydrating, regardless of our life stage. But when you do come into menopause, you do have to make that extra special effort with protein intake, with sleep, because of the symptoms that you're experiencing. And perhaps, don't go guns for blaze like you have been. Taper down on HIIT, lift weights, make sure you get that rest and recovery. So it's sort of the everything you're doing really on the outside that becomes so much more important. And I think that is the really key message, and sort of, as I say, reframing your why, because again, that motivation can really hinder progress when you are tired. But if you can dig deep and your why is, attainable and achievable, you will stick to it.
Yeah, and I also think a lot of the time, especially with the women we work with, when menopause symptoms arise, that's almost like the first sign, I actually need to start taking care of my health. Whereas maybe you've been able to get away with doing the odd bit here and there and coast along and, kind of felt okay. Actually, this is a diversion point where you can go one of two ways. Like, you can grab the bull by the horns and really look after yourself and have a much better experience. But if you don't, the other path is so much more uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe earlier in your 20s, you can get away with just a token effort here and there. You can't really anymore.
No, totally. And I think that is the thing, that even though we're having these really positive conversations about how it's not too late, so many women don't realise they're at that life stage until it's often not too late, but it's at a stage where they do have to make that extra special effort. And that's often because we're caring for families. We are at that life stage where we are looking after elderly or sick parents. And, one of the things I think that really resonates with a lot of women that I work with, and this is no disrespect to the men at home that are putting their weight and doing brilliant jobs. I'm sure there are thousands of them out there. But as a woman, I've always felt that I'm the kind of person that holds everybody together. So I do absolutely everything. So, you get everybody up, you get them to school, you do the breakfast, you think about lunch, you tidy the house, you do the laundry, you go to work, they come back from school, you give them supper, you put them to bed, you read them a bedtime story.
It's a full-time job.
Full-time job.
Yeah.
Where is my time? And then you don't realise all these things are happening until it's too late.
And it's you have to almost have those non-negotiables around making that time and having a honest conversations with your partner as well about being able to find that time for each other, which is not easy. For some people, that hasn't been a foundation of what their relationship's being built on.
Yeah.
To be able to factor some of those things in and realize the importance of you being healthy and you staying fit and mentally healthy and everything else that we're talking about.
That's such a good point. I remember, and my husband, please don't shoot me down if you do listen to this. I remember when our kids were young, we would have that competitive chat about who's had less sleep.
Oh my God, yeah, we're so in that stage.
That's me.
Yeah.
Because
I've got
emptied the dishwasher
20-month-old, and it's literally well, I got him up and got him to school. Well, I did it for 3 days last week.
Yeah. And so that's the thing. It's that, so I think you have those things, and obviously, you appreciate everything everybody's doing in the house, but there still is that time at the weekend when maybe there's that window of opportunity to exercise. And it'd be who's going to get it first? And, we definitely had that. And then I think you come into this next life stage. And actually, for me, coming into menopause, my thing was fear of acknowledging it, to tell my husband that essentially it was game over. Life was over because that's what we're told. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to tell him I'm peri-menopausal, and he's going to go and find a younger version, because you're fed images that's it. It's your end of life stage. And
which is just bullshit.
It's total bullshit. It's totally.
Yeah.
For me, it's been my total reinvention. It's been the beginning of everything. I am the strongest, the fittest, I'd say most stable. People might disagree. That I've ever been in my life. It's not been linear getting here, and I'm sure I've got plenty of mountains to climb still, but I'm doing that as the best possible version of myself at this particular time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think we've got hundreds of clients who would say the same. That actually, if you take the ownership and you choose this direction, you can actually be better, stronger, fitter than any other point in your life, because you're more emotionally mature, you have more resources, you have more time. Actually, you are in a great position if you choose to focus on you to make it amazing.
Yeah, totally. And that's the message that you know, we all need to get through, because I think there is so much noise around menopause at the moment, and there are so many different ways that people are being guided. And obviously, you know, I know we touched on sort of social media outside, you know, it is difficult because everybody is being fed sometimes messages that might not be right, different messages. Where do they go? You know, the whole diet culture, you know, keto, fasting, juicing. We have to unravel so much at a time that is so confusing with all that messaging.
Yeah.
And I think that hopefully as you come into this life stage, you know, like I'm saying, you can find your why, you can like just sit down and take a step back and think, okay, that does sound sensible, that doesn't sound sensible. You know, to kind of not eat for 20 hours doesn't sound sensible. You know, you wouldn't leave your car kind of empty. And so those are the kind of, you know, negative conversations I think that are sort of happening. What we need to do is go, okay, right, let's take stock. How do we thrive? And we can thrive, and this is how. And it's not just about HRT, because again, you're then excluding a massive pool of women who don't want to. Yeah.
Just to return, you've mentioned a few times about finding your why. How do you explore that with clients?
So I don't want to give too much away because I've written a little bit about that in my book. But essentially, it's just totally removing any aesthetic reason and just cutting it.
Why is that? Because it's not always a bad thing, is it?
It's not always a bad thing. And this is a conversation I love. And I often get myself into like heated debates on Instagram about this. Because I think that some women, and not all women, be careful about how I phrase that, who perhaps have had disordered eating growing up, just always place such unrealistic weight goals on themselves. And they also don't allow themselves the time to achieve it. You know, we are living in such a society of, so I want to lose a stone and I want that to happen by the Christmas party, which is in 3 weeks' time. And they don't achieve it. And so they're like, okay, well, sod that. I'll just do, you know, new year, new me. And it's just a cyclical regime that a lot of women get themselves into when they're going for one specific number on a scale. What I would love to encourage women to do, and I guess that's sort of the why, is that actually how refreshing would it be for 1 year to come into the new year not going, I'm going to set some new weight goals or new this, but that every single day your body is being nourished and looked after. And so it's not seasonal. Because I know that for me, like that was just one of the most debilitating things growing up, was that literally December you'd be like, yeah, sod it, it's Christmas, drink, eat, blah, 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 I'll do that in January. And then kind of January comes, you do really well. And then, you know, it's Easter, eat loads of chocolate, and then the summer, and then, oh, got to lose weight for the summer. And, you know, you see so many women that lose weight for the summer, and then they go on holiday, and then they eat normally, and they have a really terrible holiday because they're bloated and they're lethargic.
Well, these are just external drivers. It's extrinsic motivation, which I feel like you can use to an extent. But yeah, if you want you want to go the distance, which is life, you definitely need to have those more intrinsic reasons why, which it sounds like you were sort of touching on.
I mean, my why is like longevity. Is I want to be there for my kids. My dad's not around anymore. And that breaks my heart. And I literally don't want my kids, even at the age of 42, not to be around. Yeah. I'm not saying that what I'm doing is going to prevent that from happening, but I'm giving myself a best fighting chance of fighting anything that might show up. You know, my mum has quite weak bones. I already have osteopenia in both my hips. Yeah. I don't want to be the frail person walking into the room that my kids have to worry about. Because
that is it with osteoporosis. A lot of people, you're not actually aware that you have osteoporosis until you break a bone, and it's often too late. And the only real way to kind of reverse that, if you even can, is to start strength training, to just put your body and bones under more, you know, consistent tension. But it's, you know, that's pretty much the worst place you want to be. It's like, oh, my leg just broke, and I've now got osteoporosis, and it's a much larger mountain to climb.
I mean, and I feel really privileged to know that I have a diagnosis of osteopenia. I know that sounds crazy. Yeah. But I think what's interesting
how
about
did that come about?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, what's interesting about that is, like, you know, I was saying to you out there, sort of the medical side, I'm not that I'm not all over it. I want to leave that to the real doctors of science and experts. But It came about because I was doing some work with a menopause doctor, and so I had the fortune of doing a DEXA scan.
Okay.
I
They're
had
amazing.
disordered.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. They're quite like that.
Yeah.
For someone with ADHD, lying still for that long. But I had disordered eating growing up. So what I found interesting when doing that was all the questions they asked you. So have you suffered eating disorders, alcohol, cigarettes? You know, so it's actually not really what you're doing, which makes sense now. It's what you've done in the past. And I have had some wonderful moments of which I have never regretted until that diagnosis. So yes, I used to smoke. I used to drink like a fish. I have taken, drugs, and I've probably over-exercised. I've run too much. I've not nourished my body. So I've done all the things that are not putting myself at the best place. So anyway, so I had this, had the DEXA scan, and my dad actually had 2 hip fractures. So again, they take into factor genetics, and it's actually osteopenia in both my hips and
so you found
at the
that
base
out
of my
from
spine. So
the
I found
DEXA
that
scan?
out. Wouldn't have known otherwise.
Yeah, because that is typically the case, isn't it? Like not everyone, like a DEXA scan's like almost like, it looks like a mini MRI to an extent, and most people aren't going to go and get them. They are fantastic. I think they're about £150 typically.
They are, but what people can do, just if they're wondering, is you can go online and go to the FRAX score, so FRAX, and get your FRAX score, and you can do that yourself. And if it brings up that you might be, a predisposition to osteoporosis, osteopenia, you can take that to your GP, who can then refer you for a DEXA scan.
That's really good information.
That's really good, yeah.
Especially, obviously, in the UK, that is. I don't know what the situation would be in the US, whether you might be able to get it on insurance or...
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But I think it's really interesting that that's a strong why that then helped drive you forwards. And as you get to this stage of life, it is easier to make those whys more meaningful because they're more tangible. When you've lost somebody or actually things are starting to niggle and you are starting to feel, it's very different to when you're in your 20s and everything feels a lifetime away. You can just, it doesn't matter, I'll fix that later. And again, I think that's a reason why this is a really great period of life to take action because it's easier to tap into those deeper whys. They're more tangible.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think, again, kind of coming to that, with my children as well, I want my daughter to grow up seeing me as a positive role model. I don't want her to suffer the sort of, not eating like I did. I want her to always love food. I want her to move, and I want her to move her body because it feels good as well. So I think that is another big driver and is another big why. I think, again, it is hard, and I'm really mindful when I sit here sort of saying, find your why and then go out and do it. Because yes, although when we do come into this life stage, we have got the time to sit back, it would be wrong to assume that we've all got the same 24 hours in a day. And that's one of the things that
not true.
We don't have the same 24 hours in a day. So I always think I've got to just check myself because I'm sitting here going, do this, do that. But actually for some people, it's a lot harder.
It is. But then I think you've also, where we always kind of, like our big thing is, cutting the BS with yourself because a lot of people can just get, well, I've got all these issues and I've got no time and I've got this and I've got this and I've got this. And it's all of a sudden it's like, okay, so if that is like truly the case, you either have to look at it as well, you're going to keep going down the path that you are and, expect to have these health issues or life not to get any better for the next 1, 3, 5, 10 years. Are you okay with that? And if the answer is no, then you have to just look at making a change because, and people hate it when I say this, but it's, I just say, how you spend your time is a matter of priorities. You make time for what's important to you. So you're obviously making time for lots of other things, whether it's job, family, kids, work, Netflix, phone. There's lots of things that people are making time for. And I think if you order that properly and your health is something that's important to you, you will and should make time for it. Not that people do, but it can be it's never to play down anyone how busy somebody feels in that moment, but you often can find little nuggets of time here and there and start to stay consistent.
Just to play devil's advocate, though, I have had a client where we did do the priorities exercise, and the priorities in order was business, and then family, and then health. And we'd carefully talked about this is definitely your priority. But obviously,
if you're healthy, you'll perform better at your business. If you're healthy, you'll be able to play the game of business for longer. So it's kind of like, are you? What are you? What are you viewing that for in that sort of sense? Like,
I am on board with you. However, I feel at this time of life, again, people have done maybe the majority of the time heavy child rearing, and it feels like right now is my time to shine in my career or build this new business or whatever. And it's a bit of that, like, women are promised you can have it all coming up again. And then we actually know now, like, we can't have it all, right? Like,
And that's okay.
Yeah. But so for somebody who's had to put their career on hold for 10, 15 years, now that is what they want to prioritize.
Yeah.
And I'm totally with you. You know, making the time to exercise in the mornings will mean you're more productive in the daytime. However, for somebody to make that shift doesn't always feel easy. And it's hard to get that buy-in when it feels like it's a counter.
Yeah.
And also, sorry, just to say, and also, there are single mums out there. There are people who are, you know, with the, sort of economically, the country's not in a great state. You know, a single mum, or whether not a single mum, someone working 3 jobs. You know, so, and I'm so mindful of that, because it's like, how do we tap in to everybody?
Yeah.
You know, my message is I don't want to leave anybody standing.
100%.
But it is hard, and even those people still, like, totally agree with what you're saying, have to try and find the time. And, you know, even if it is, I mean, you know, the whole exercise snacking thing, I get it's little habits, and that can create better habits.
Could you just explain that, because our listeners might not have heard of it before?
Exercise snacking.
Yes.
So it's just little breaks.
It's
of
not having
exercise.
a biscuit whilst you exercise.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
You know, it's 5-10 minutes when you can, getting it in, getting off the bus a little bit earlier, you know, getting off that tube, you know, one stop before, when the kettle's on, doing some squats. And like, I think that has its place. What I don't want people to do is to replace that way of exercising and think that that's all they need to do, because it's not. But it can be a really good entry level to building motivation. And on the days when, you know, you haven't got anything to do, something is always better than nothing. But I think you're right. And actually, that is obviously one of the things that I do. All my classes are at 6:30 in the morning, in the hope that people can get up, get it done, before they go to work.
Best time to beat procrastination.
And that means, you know, you've got the school run, you know, after that. So, because by the time you've maybe done the school run, you've taken, you might have to go to work. You know, it's just getting it done. And like you will say to people, just set your alarm for 15 minutes earlier. Oh, but I can't. Well, you can if you want to, and that's when the penny will drop, right? If you really want to, only you can do it. You can have the best trainer, you know, you can have the best gym, you can have the best gym kit, you can have everything, but actually the only person that can make change is you.
And that's why it's important to have a deep why, a more deeper rooted why, whether that's you know, extrinsic and intrinsic. I think a combination of both can be helpful. But yeah, if you just keep setting those extrinsic goals of like, I'll do a 30-day challenge, or I'll do this diet, or I've got a holiday or Christmas coming up, like, you're constantly in that cycle, versus the intrinsic allows you to just go a bit deeper and, you know, allow yourself to consistently keep showing up.
Yeah, and like with you, I think if they've got somebody like you or Stacey, you know, helping them and guiding them with achievable goals, that's okay. It's when people make these things up and go, right, I'm going to run, and I'm going to run 5K tomorrow. And, you know, you as a trainer would say, that's probably not the best thing to do. Why don't you walk for 20 minutes tomorrow and look at achieving 5K, you know, in
one of the first
time.
questions we ask our clients is...
Sorry to interrupt, just a quick ask. If you are enjoying today's episode, then please do give us a follow, just to make sure you get every episode and we can keep cutting the BS and helping you hit your goals.
What's the least that you can commit to? So it's like a very different question. So like, you know, someone will be like, right, I'm going to work out 5 days a week. I've signed up to the program. I'm going to do this. We're going to do that. And it's just like, you just told me you've got 4 kids, you work full time. You're going to be, you know, like there's all these other responsibilities. I'm like, where's that fitting in? You know what I mean? So then we say, what's the least? And then we actually get an actual reasonable answer. And it's like, hey, let's start there, stay consistent. And in a couple of weeks, we'll reevaluate if you want to or can do more.
Sometimes we actually have to argue them down.
Yeah,
and they're like, no, I can do 4. Well, I'm just going to get you to do 2.
Start there.
Let's just do 2.
Yeah, but that's the best way. Then they can find that commitment, you know.
And if you do
it.
fit in 3, then you can be super proud of yourself because you beat your goal.
Yeah.
So I think that mentality though is something that as women, like we always want to be our best, show up as our best, like do all the things. And if you see everyone else out there, especially with social media, you know, people saying, oh, you just need to train this every day, or it's only 20 minutes every day, in your head, like there's this monologue saying, well, 2 a week is not what everyone else is saying to do.
Yeah.
So I think getting it out there that actually less is sometimes more,
Absolutely.
and particularly if that leads to consistency.
Yeah,
Totally.
that is the way. Like if you exercise twice a week for the next 3 years, and on those 2 sessions you progressively got fitter, stronger, faster, and could work out more intense, that is a boatload better than just peaks and troughs of on, off, on, off, on, off. You know, would I want to see someone do more? Like maybe yes, but if they were living, like if they were walking a lot, they had an active job, there's other variables to take into account where, you know, that could be enough for some people. And again, the consistency part is huge to it.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to know actually with your program, what's the setup? Is it every day? Is it a couple times a week?
So yeah, so that is a good question, because I often get, do you work out every day? You know, because there's something every day. I'm not the only trainer on there, but I've tried to break it down so into sort of body parts, so that, you know, you're training upper body on a Monday. Tuesday we do HIIT, because everybody loves HIIT. Although, you know, I try to
Not me.
tell. Well, I try to explain. I think the problem is that this demographic of women, that's where we are. It's that quick, effective, you know, fast workout that sadly I see a lot of women coming to me with crippling joint aches and pains from all the jumping and the jarring. But the way I do it is not sort of, you know, your typical go as hard as you can. It's more the timing, and it's more body weight, because it's just a nice session. Wednesday we have strength and conditioning with another trainer, and that's normally bands or just something a little bit lighter on the joints. Thursday's lower body, Friday full body, Saturday's Pilates. Sunday's face yoga, dance on a Tuesday.
I love that you have face yoga. Can you explain that for our audience?
I've never even heard of face yoga.
Explain it for Jamie.
So it's basically a non-surgical facelift. How about that is maybe the best way. So you do lots of funny face moves, you know, and brush down here.
I really think we need to do a session.
You're trying to say
I'll give you a free login, and you can come. I don't do it. I haven't got the Tamu who does it is brilliant. I sadly, with my, you know, personality, don't have the pace. And actually we also do, so on that note, actually we have a wonderful breathwork specialist, Anna Goff, who comes on a Tuesday. So what I've tried to do is pull in all the elements that we need to be doing. And then people can pick and choose, because obviously people still want to run, they might still want to go to classes. But if they've got this pool of other resources, if they can't get out, you know, and I think the thing, because it's predominantly aimed at midlife women, that slightly sets it apart is we've got a community. So it's managed 24/7. So for me, one of my most crippling symptoms was feeling really, really lonely. And we talked about this, didn't we? Kind of the lockdown sort of thing. And I felt just like I was dealing with, I didn't feel like myself. There were times, and, you know, that I actually wanted to drive into a tree, not to take my own life, but for someone to just stop the noise and to take care of me. Because you just didn't feel like yourself. And so my thing is, if I've got this community where someone doesn't feel like they can share or they can talk to people around them, then there's somebody there that can help them. And that, again, is why I do the lives, because in the morning, you know, you've got all these lovely faces smiling at you. Yeah. And that can really change somebody's day. Because I felt totally invisible in my own life, like, although it was really busy, you know, and I don't want other people, and that, again, has been sort of the why of what I'm doing rather than my own fitness, is I do not want any other woman to feel like I felt at that time. Like, it was horrific.
Yeah.
And I think especially since lockdown, loads of people still work from home, and it isn't uncommon to not see another human apart from your family Monday to Friday.
Yeah.
And because actually home workouts are so much more accessible, maybe you go for a run, you don't actually even go to a gym, you don't even go to the shops, you get your shop delivered. Yeah. You literally don't see another person. So I think that's super important. And community, as we know, is so valuable, because it's one thing coming from a trainer. It's another thing coming from somebody who's living the same experience as you and can really empathise and really, like, share what's worked for them, share what hasn't worked for them. So yeah, big advocates of community.
And I was going to say something as a lifeline type thing, and you may want to come onto this or not. Again, one of the things that I think midlife women do is because they are emotionally trying to deal with so much, and some of the messaging that they're receiving, or they don't know where to turn, sort of with that anxiety that seems to show up quite liberally. A lot of women turn to alcohol. To manage their anxiety and their symptoms. And that's definitely what I did by the time I came out of lockdown.
Yeah.
And so I kind of want women to know that actually that, when you're going through menopause, that is not your friend if you are suffering from anxiety, and it will, as you know, hinder any training that you're trying to do.
Well, it's going to affect your sleep. So I started wearing a Whoop about a year ago. And even like a couple of drinks, see my resting heart rate go from about 48, 49 up to about 65 off like 2 drinks. So that's like my heart beating 15, 16 beats a minute more while I sleep for 6-7 hours. So that could be like a couple of thousand more beats, which means you're going to wake up more tired, more lethargic, more anxious, less like, and then because you're more tired than everything else, heart rate variability goes down, so your body's just under more stress. And like, what's that going to mean? It's going to mean your day's harder off like 2, and that's 2 drinks. Yeah. That's not like 2 bottles of wine, which is easy to do. It's 6 glasses.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So, and then that obviously has a massive knock-on effect on appetite and everything else. So yeah, there's a slew of issues. We're never dogmatic. I'm not against alcohol in any ways, but there sometimes does need to be seasons if you're going through other phases or seasons of your life where it's like, hey, like I'm not feeling my best, drinking something that we know maybe in the short term can really help or feels like it can help, but then becomes a crutch and then also makes us feel so much worse the next day and days afterwards.
It becomes a cycle then as well, doesn't it? Because you end up feeling a bit sorry for yourself the next evening, and then, I'll just sit on the sofa with a glass of wine. Yeah. And then it all begins again.
Yeah.
And I do think, again, it is very specific to this stage of life in a lot of ways, because when you have a teeny tiny child, there was no way I was touching alcohol for like the last 2 years, because it wasn't worth being that tired when he woke up multiple times. Whereas now I'm like, okay, I can have a glass of wine, I can risk it. And that can only then continue in one way. And I think it becomes more normalised and you've got more spare time, and maybe you're going out a bit more as well. So I definitely see it in a lot of clients as well. It's like it's almost like a vibe, like, oh, mummy has a glass of wine. That's what I do when I'm cooking.
Mummy wine culture that they kind of said, yes. And I think that kind of comes back to that midlife culture, and I can tell you it really does exacerbate all of the symptoms, and it doesn't give your muscle enough time to recover if you are lifting, all of those things. So that I think one of the biggest things.
Sleep, everything.
If you've ever done a hard session and then drank a lot of alcohol, you have DOMs for like a week. Like I train regularly and have them for like well over a decade. If I had drank a lot, if I trained heavy on Friday and legs and then drank a lot, I would be sore and stiff for about 4 or 5 days. So yeah, it has a huge impact on your recovery, especially if you're training.
Yeah, it's a big midlife no.
Yeah,
but not never. So we never say
never.
No, you're right. And actually, that is sort of my own journey was that I did 20 months of sobriety.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, share.
And actually, I did it because coming out of lockdown. I could have smashed a couple of bottles easily a day, but life was stressful. Homeschooling 3 kids, trying to run a business, and my dad had a diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. So I was like, okay. But I literally remember getting to the 30th of December 2020, it must have been, and going, I can't do this anymore. I can't live a lie to what I was trying to encourage people to do, and I'm very honest and transparent about that. And I was fucking knackered. I was just so tired. So I was like, right, I'll do dry January. So did dry January, and that's kind of fine, isn't it? Because I was just like over it. And then I was like, and we were in lockdown again, or coming into lockdown, weren't we? So yeah, 2021. So then I did February and March, and then it just escalated. And then I think 21st of June, we were coming out, and I was like, well, I'll have a coming out thing. And then I was like, I've done, and I've got this far. And actually then my dad had that diagnosis, and I became a carer for him. But he lives an hour and a half away. So I was like, okay, I can't drink, because if I get a call and I've got to be there, I'll never forgive myself. So I was like, right, finding your why is key with it, whatever your goal, I guess. And so that was my thing. So literally For 20 months, 22 months, I didn't drink, and I felt amazing. But I am an all or nothing person. And, you know, I've had obviously disordered eating. My relationship with alcohol was very dysfunctional, but I think it relates and resonates with a lot of women because it was something I turned to good times, bad times. There was always an excuse to have a drink. Friday, oh, I'll do Monday, Tuesday. Oh, it's Wednesday, have one. You know, like we're really good at talking ourselves into that drink. And then obviously my dad passed away and I still didn't drink for like 6 months. And then there was just something in me that's like, you know what? Let's see, give it a go. My relationship with alcohol has changed. I'm not saying that this is for everybody because there will be people that can't have the one. But I was always the person that couldn't have one drink. I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know.
Yeah.
And now I can have one and go, that's fine. But actually what I then say to myself is, what's the point in having one? Because actually it isn't any good for you. So then you don't have one. So I feel like it gave me a really good sense of control. And my symptoms of menopause completely and utterly changed. So for me, it wasn't until I made the fundamental lifestyle changes with food, exercise, quitting alcohol, that I began to thrive.
Mm-hmm. I think something you just said there about your why is really powerful because many women will have been able to go without alcohol during pregnancy, and you had another good reason for somebody else again. But to just decide for yourself to do it is so much harder. Why is that?
I don't know. If I had the answer, I'd be a millionaire. Because I think we all, predominantly as women and men, maybe I'm not a man, I think we do put everybody else first. So our why is always somebody else. But actually, you know, I did stay sober for 6 months after my dad died. And actually my kids said to me I was more present in that time. So, but again, that's for somebody else, isn't it? So I don't know, I can't answer that question, but, you know, perhaps that is the key to success in any program is, you know, if you can't do it for yourself, then do it for somebody that is really close to you, just to help you get through maybe that first phase. And then it becomes habit, I guess, and it becomes consistent.
It becomes part of your identity almost, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's really good advice because we do get a lot of women that struggle to say, oh, I'm worth it doing it for myself at the beginning.
Yeah.
And so saying, I'm going to do it for my kids, I'm going to do it to be there for my mum is easier to commit to in a lot of ways. And then once you've got that rhythm, you start to actually then believe you're worth it because you've proven to yourself that you can do hard things.
Yeah, and also don't say it's forever, because I think again you're putting such a finite term on it. You know, it's like that unrealistic goal. I always just said I'll do it for as long as I want to. That was sort of my thing, and I did. And you know, I have no regrets about coming back to having the odd glass, and it's fine. And I don't feel it's impacted my training or my menopause again because I am not drinking to the extent that I was.
You also said just now you got your fitness in check, you got your drinking back to, well, nothing, but then manageable, and you adjusted your food. What did you do with your diet?
So I started eating.
Okay.
Right.
Everyone's like,
Always
what?
helps.
You eat food? No, I was eating, but I wasn't eating the right foods, you know, especially as I'd started this journey to lifting weights. So kind of interesting to know for both of you as well. So when I qualified as a PT, which I know is a lot later than both of you, there was nothing specific in there about menopause or really you know anything like that.
That's all.
Rather like pre and postnatal, right? So I did my pre and postnatal because I wanted to, and then there was nothing about sort of menopause or what we should eat. And you touch on everything just so minimally. So I didn't really. I guess I didn't leave having been trained as a level 3 PT equipped with the knowledge that I needed to be able to pass on to my clients. So therefore, that's why I ended up I did a Burrell education course. So I did further study so that I could be, that person that had more knowledge. But certainly protein and, all of these things, carbs, what? You don't eat carbs? Fat? That was the culture that I grew up in. And, then we've got all this intermittent fasting. I know that definitely has its place for some people. But it was learning actually what I needed. And again, everybody is individual. And I think that's really important to remember, is to find what works for you. But I started eating 3 wholesome, balanced meals a day. Protein at every meal, every plate, lovely leafy greens, good carbs, good fats, and slowly actually implementing that, and then allowing 3 to 4 hours between each meal, I stopped snacking. So kind of reversing, I guess, a little bit was, and I think this will resonate with a lot of midlife women, is that what I was doing, what I see clients doing, previous to, and now I eat really well, is they do the fasting, or they don't eat, so they just don't eat all morning, and then it gets like 12 and they're like, oh my God, I'm so hungry. So they'll have something to eat, and they might have had loads of oat milk lattes as well in the morning, you know, thinking that they're being really healthy. And then that's it. Once they eat at 12, their body's gone, oh my God, you're going to feed me. And they just snack, and they continue to snack. And then it's 5 o'clock and they have the glass of wine. And then they might have the crisps and the peanuts and the nuts. And then they have dinner. And that's like literally within that 7-hour window, you have probably eaten more of the stuff that you shouldn't have. So what I have encouraged people to do and you know, implemented myself is I was never a breakfast person. And I've trained myself to have, you know, eggs. I had eggs on my way out here today with some spinach. And then lunch, you know, something that is going to keep me full until supper and allow 3 to 4 hours. And that has helped stop the snacking, sugary cravings, you know, my blood sugars are stable. It doesn't necessarily work for everybody, and it takes, you know, a lot to get there. And it's about balance. Like, God, I have days where, you know, it doesn't quite go according to plan. But then I don't self-sabotage, and I think that's another thing that a lot of
a lot of the women we work with are, you know, chronic perfectionists, all or nothing mindset, as you said yourself, and it's understanding that mentality can serve you in other areas of your life sometimes, your career, in school, you know, being the perfectionist and getting the A star and all of these different things can really serve you in other parts of your life. But then, you know, your health and your fitness and your family and your career, it's not a 30-day challenge. If you could do it for 30 days, I'm sure you could smash it out of the park and be 100% consistent.
Yeah.
But there's peaks and troughs with life, kids, work, family. So having an expectation that you'll be 100% all the time is quite literally setting you up to fail. And understanding that some days are going to be 40% and that's actually 100, and just understanding what that balance needs to look like and reframing that expectation in your head.
Totally agree. And that's one of the things is be more forgiving of yourself, I think, as we come into this midlife stage. And I think that's the premise sort of behind the book. It is a 30-day program, but that's to make change. It's to try and encourage people to make that change and to see that, and actually in the videos, I will say a lot of the time, you might not be feeling this today. Don't worry about it. That will be your sleep, your mood, what you've eaten, just lifestyle factors, all of that. So that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we can't all fire at 100% the whole time.
Of course not.
But it's getting that balance, and it's knowing when you do, because I think that's another thing, like you're saying, a lot of women do, is that they do really well, and then they might have that extra glass of wine and that bag of crisps, and then they just carry on. But that's okay. Park it. Have that. Enjoy it. Like, enjoy it. You don't have to have any more.
Yeah.
And you also haven't ruined, anything by having just a glass of wine and some nuts.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mentality that I was definitely guilty of, was, well, I've already ruined it now, so what's another glass of wine? What's a takeaway? What's tomorrow? Might as well go to McDonald's. Yeah. I'll start again on Monday. And so when you break that, like, perfect versus ruined line.
Yeah, and it only takes 2 or 3 days, right, of that to then really fall, like, just to not come back. And, and that's sort of another thing I say, try not to have more than 2 or 3 days like that, or 2 or 3 days off, because your brain is so clever at convincing you, and, you know,
our brains are just so annoying.
Those excuses that they come up with, and you're like,
they're so
oh my
smart.
God, they are so smart.
Yeah. A good one is like to just try and not miss twice. Yeah. So you know what I mean? And it's just like, if you missed your workout once, don't miss it twice. You know, if you missed your walk once, don't miss it twice. If you've, you know, overdone it on your nutrition or something, you know, don't make it happen twice. And it's just kind of like a cue to, you know, I actually used this when I started flossing a couple of years ago, because I'd just never done it before. I used to just brush my teeth a couple of times, 2 or 3 times a day, and I was like, flossing felt like such a, just hated doing that after. Flossing. Yeah, but then I was like, right, don't. That was my
Side
rule.
note, have you tried a water flosser?
No.
You would love it.
Okay.
Oh, I think I
Great.
might get one of those.
Oh my gosh.
Sounds
much
lovely.
more-
It's like an electric toothbrush for your flossing. So it, like when you first start, you're like, blimey, because it's like high-powered water, like, and you just like going. It's brilliant. Actually,
You wait till
makes
your
it kind of
child,
fun.
your youngest gets their hands on that. You won't find that so funny. I mean, honestly, my 7-year-old would have a field day with that one.
Yeah, maybe you need to keep it somewhere else,
Keep
out
it
of reach.
somewhere else.
But try it.
Definitely. A big one I did want to touch on, because I have like a couple of trains of thoughts around this is, say you have got someone who is doing the strength workouts, getting the sleep, managing the stress, eating great food, but they still just don't feel like themselves. And they're possibly looking at like HRT or hormone replacement therapy. Like, how do you feel about HRT?
Yeah, great question. Obviously, really good to caveat that I am not a doctor and I am not medical. So to caveat that with, if that is you and that is the woman, please make sure that you remember that it's your own personal journey and you must go and see your GP and get your own personal prescription. Because again, I think with social media, everybody's beginning to slightly self-prescribe or take things into their own hands. I am on HRT, so I am not anti it at all. I would say if that is that woman, absolutely go and give it a try if she needs to, if nothing else is happening, because it's really important to rule out any other underlying issues, because we may think it's menopause and we might say it's that, but equally it would be good to get your bloods checked if it's a thyroid issue, to see if it's anything more sinister, and to get that ruled out. And then if it's not, to get that prescription of HRT to help. But then don't think because you're on HRT, you need to give up all the lifestyle changes, because I think that's kind of what a lot of people might do, is they'll get the HRT and then they'll be like, great, I don't need to do all of that. But you do, and even more so. And again, obviously there's lots of research going on, but there have been seen to be protective benefits, obviously, of HRT, the estrogen side, on obviously your bone density, and actually on brain health. Dr. Lisa Mosconi is an absolute expert in that field, although she did say yesterday that there still needs to be a lot of research into the effects of estrogen on our brain, on our Alzheimer's. So that's not 100% conclusive, but definitely it has benefits on your bone health and your heart health.
And your mental health as well.
Although, I mean, exercise, I think for me, exercise, I think is the best thing for your mental health. I think HRT can help, but in the way that it gets you moving again.
Yeah. So that's what I've typically seen, is like sometimes, we can be saying all these things that you want to do that are healthy to get you going, but if you're in the midst of your peri-menopause or even going through menopause, and you're just like, I just have not got the energy, sometimes actually taking HRT can be the catalyst to actually get you to start taking these other healthy habits, and it can really compound and get you feeling.
It also can take. So I've been on it for 3 years. And I'm still tweaking.
Yeah.
So it's not, again, it's not something where you just take it.
About,
no, and it's
where
like,
you think it's just going to be take it and everything's fixed, and it is very much trial and error, isn't it? Getting the right dose, getting the right prescription.
And I'll be totally honest about it. So I started on Neutrogestin tablets, and then my periods were like all over the place, and they would just come, and then they would be heavy, and they would be hit. So it wasn't. It actually made them worse. So it wasn't something that worked for me. I ended up getting the coil fitted. That in itself took like 12 weeks to settle down. Patches, gel, sprays. There's all these different ones. I wasn't absorbing the patches, which again they're now saying is a thing. I think there's some research going on into that. And so now I'm back on the gel. I think that's working. I seem to be fairly stable. But there are definitely moments in my cycle where I'm like, okay, so because I don't have my periods, but my hormones are still fluctuating and doing their own thing, I can kind of tell, and again, it comes to the training thing, where I am, because I might not be as motivated. I get the odd niggle. So I'm like, okay, so if I wasn't on the Mirena coil, I'd probably be getting my period in about a week. So I think actually, then coming to that point would be for every woman over the age of 35, in fact, every woman over the age of 20, or from when you start your periods, track them.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Because there is nothing more powerful as a woman, and I'm sure as a man as well, than knowing your own body. And if it doesn't feel normal or it doesn't sound right, you can be a really good advocate for your own health. And I think
100%,
that is where we need to be at the moment, especially with, sadly, the state of maybe, the NHS.
Yeah, it's something that we always talk about, tracking your cycle. And I think often if somebody's listening that is perimenopausal and thinks, well, my cycle's all over the shop, or, you know, getting very close to menopause itself, then it might feel like that doesn't apply to you. But like you said, it might not be a cycle that you've known, 28 days, but you can still recognize, okay, this is when I'm peaking, this is when I'm troughing, and then understand what might come next. Not in terms of like the days that's going to happen, but just preparing yourself a little bit.
But and equally going back to your point, you know, that woman who doesn't know what to do next. You know, I had really terrible bloating, and I was like, okay, so that's, you know, and you'd go, well, it must be menopause because it says bloating. And I have since had a gazillion colonoscopies. I've been diagnosed with basically being at predisposition potentially of having colorectal cancer, because that is in my family. My dad had cancer, my granny had cancer. My children are now on the radar, but when I went for my colonoscopy, I had like 20 polyps removed. And then they also discovered something from a stool sample that potentially showed that my pancreas wasn't giving out enough digestive enzymes. So a lot of, again, things. And I went to have those tests because I knew that it didn't feel right for my body. And when I've actually mentioned that on social media, everyone has said, well, that's because you've got private healthcare. I didn't have private healthcare. I was persistent. And I think that is the problem. And that's kind of reversing what I'm saying. If you can track it and you can, you know, then come out and say, no, this isn't right, and keep pushing and keep pushing, you know, you will get the help that you need, whether it's menopause, whether it's, you know, bowel issues, whatever it is. But be assertive, and you have every right to be the best possible version of yourself. Sadly, we have to fight for it a little bit more, but don't be afraid to just keep
I think
asking.
that is, you do have to fight for it, because
You do.
even if you go and get HRT off a doctor, like you just said, it's, you know, menopause and male menopause are both just hormone deficiencies. Like that is what's happening. And for, you know, you can get back to feeling good, but you might never get back to where you fully want to be without maybe taking it. And again, it's a personal choice. Whether people decide to take HRT or TRT, but I think going to the one doctor and getting one pill and thinking that's the answer, there is often a lot more work to do with that.
Well, and also I could keep talking all day. Also, like if at the moment, because everyone is going on HRT, which is great if they need it, you know, there are shortages. So what then happens, and this is what I say to a lot of women, there then becomes fear that they're not going to get their HRT, and they go into panic. But for me, if you have got your diet and your exercise and all of the external things under control, you've got a better chance of managing what might come up if you can't get your HRT than you haven't if you're not putting those things into practice. So it's always just, you know, knowing that if you're doing the good things, like you're saying, like, you know, the client, you know, if something's not right, it could be the HRT or it could be something else, because you're still smashing those things. So it just helps you pinpoint a little bit more. But also equally, if you can't get your HRT, which is a real thing at the moment for a lot of women, you know, hopefully, and I'm not saying everybody can, but you can manage many of the symptoms with those lifestyle choices.
The best way I try to see it is like doing all these like healthy habits, strength training, drinking more water, getting good sleep, managing your stress. That's like your soil. And like you want to have like a really good strong foundation and soil. And when you put like HRT on top of that, will just make the grass or the plant bloom so much more, versus like if you just add the HRT to a soil that's not the best, you know, you might get something sprouting through, but are you going to be able to feel your absolute best? And like I said, if you do have to take the HRT away for whatever reason might happen, at least then like you have still really got that strong foundation to rely on.
Yeah, totally.
So you said before about like setting goals in the past were very aesthetic. Do you have goals at the moment? What do they look like?
No. Do you know what? Do I have goals at the moment? Well, I guess I've got the book coming out. That's quite a nice sort of goal. That was something that I'd wanted to do and never thought it would happen. I think my goal at the moment is to just try and keep helping as many women as possible. So it's like a long-term, lifetime goal, which keeps me really driven, because I think, like you know, the messages that you get from people's lives that you have changed and transformed, I find really propel me forward. And, you know, I'm not looking to, I would like to change the world, but no, I think my goal is to just have more conversations like this, to educate more women and more people to take control of their own journey. I guess that's a goal for the business, a goal for myself. I'd quite like to do another marathon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any
Did I
specific
just
one
say
in
that?
mind?
I'd love to do Paris and I'd love to do New York.
Ooh.
And I would like to maybe go back and do, we were talking about this earlier, do the full marathon in Lewa in Kenya. But, you know, it is that thing, like my knees are not as good as they were. So I did my last marathon last year. So I did the London one. I think they did it in October, and then they did it in April because it was quite close together. And I was like, I'm never doing it again. But I think I probably have got one more. Half marathons I love.
In terms of like health goals then, you know, like do you have anything, like, as you said, you know, previously, aesthetic goals, that was the goal constantly to strive for. Has that completely shifted now to more of like an intrinsic longevity goal now?
Yeah, I just want to be strong for as long as I possibly can. I really want to be able to lift heavier, you know, and keep going.
Why do you want to be as strong as you can? Why do you want to lift heavier?
Because for me, when I wake up and I work out and I lift weights, I feel mentally strong and physically strong. And I feel like I can cope with what might ever come my way. I'm quite self-critical. And I think if you know deep down that you're quite resilient and quite strong, you can get through quite a lot. And I think that for me, drives me forward. So I think my personal goal is to just keep getting stronger, because it's going to keep getting harder. Right? By default, we're fighting against the aging process. So what I'm doing now is great at 47, but it's going to get harder and harder and harder to keep maintaining that muscle mass and to keep on top of that bone density. So I have to continually keep pushing myself.
Amazing. Yeah. It's a good, almost like philosophy of like, just like keep doing the hard things, because it will unlock the doors to keep living a better quality life in general.
Yeah. And I also want to be able to lift heavier than my 17-year-old son.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love
He thinks that he can lift heavier than me. He's there with my dumbbells, like, look at me. And I'm like, nee. No, actually, he can be fair. He's getting there.
I mean, you actually probably could train yourself in just like one move and then surprise him.
I know, I would quite like to do that.
That would be fab.
But it is, I did that. That's the other thing I do love, actually, with the kids, is that brilliant competitiveness, certainly for my son. My daughter's not the same. How many push-ups can you do, Mum? And I'm like, okay, well, you are 17 and push-ups are just so overrated anyway, you know, because for them it's always the push-ups. So bicep curls, and then he's there, you know, doing flies and trying to do it. But I think that will always be my thing, is actually, yes, I would like to be on a par with my son, and always give him a run for his money in terms of strength.
That. Yeah. That's going to keep you fit.
Yeah. It's like that Wonderful Woman. Have you seen her? Train with Joan.
Oh, yeah. We love Train with Joan.
Love Joan.
Yeah.
And her daughter. So, yeah, I kind of feel like, you know, that they're a massive driver in all of this. So, yeah.
Amazing. And if people want to find out more about your book, which you've mentioned a few times, where can they find it? What's the name?
Thanks. So, yeah, it's available now on pre-order, although depending on when this goes out, it is available on Amazon or in any good bookshop. And it's called Owning Your Menopause, Fitter, Calmer, Stronger in 30 Days.
Love it. And where else can people find out about you?
So, Owning Your Menopause on Instagram. And obviously I've got another handle, which is KateRH_fitness.
Amazing.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun.
If you've been listening to the Body Smart podcast, you will know we work with women on a one-to-one basis. Now, our goal is for you to become a Body Smart graduate, and that means we help you hit your weight loss goal, but most importantly, we help you develop the skills, habits, and traits to make a sustainable change so you never gain that weight back. If you're interested and you're ready, willing, and able, we can guarantee that we will get you results. You can find out more with the link in the description.